by Moon inviting, and without thinking about anything, I said no. I said no. I said yes, of course. I said yes, and even the title, I think that those who have read the other books, you have another title, Death of Critical Theory, and I don't even know what we meant by death of critical theory. And those who know me know that I'm a risk taker. And I decided to accept the thing, and I said, why not? I spent nightmarish moments after that. What am I going to say? Death of critical theory. Moon is a terrorist. Because critical theory is innocent. You tell us. It's my food. It's my own. I live with that. And how am I going to... who decided of killing? What crime did critical theory do? And then I fell into I came across a book, I think some of you knows the book by Jonathan Cullen. Jonathan Cullen, Literary Theory, a very short introduction about not even 100 pages, I think. That was written in 2002, and I found that Jonathan Cullen starts by an anecdote. The anecdote that he read in end of 1980 in a vignette in the New Yorker. The vignette tells this. A young girl introduces her boyfriend to her father with the occupation. And the father didn't hear well what the occupation of the boyfriend is. And he said, "Oh, you're a theorist. I thought you were a terrorist." The parody is Jonathan Cullen rewrote this and other ones. The same girl asking her, introducing her boyfriend to the father, and the father said, "Oh, you're a terrorist. I thought." God, he was happy. Thank God, I thought you were a theorist. Which means that a theorist is worse than a terrorist. And I think that if theory is worse than a terrorist, that it deserves being assassinated. So this extermination here helped me to at least make fun of it for a while. But to work through this notion of death, of literary theory, or critical theory, I had to ask Nodar, and I thank you so much for sending me your course outline and course information. And I found that the course outline moves from the classical criticism to post-structuralism, and I use the S here for post-structuralism. Are there any students who are familiar with critical theory here? Well, Nodar's students. Are there any?
Of course, your master students are there. Yeah.
The master students.
I'm seeing their faces.
From where, and I think that you are into post-structuralism now. You are.
It happened that we started studying deconstruction last Wednesday.
Deconstruction, wonderful, very good. And then that helped me again. And so now to talk to you, the Odyssey of Critical Theory, some of you know, and I know that most of you are master or doctoral research students. I will hopefully avoid ambiguous pomposity in my rhetoric. I need first to thank you, Nodar, thank you, Mimoun, and the course outline that you sent me gave me inspiring illuminations, and I shall respond to death here by being the messenger of life. That's how I use it, because when the dead have the living, the aftermath of death, the afterlife, and discussions about death, about ending, are genealogically related to precedence, to origin, to beginning, to thresholds. And I remember then when somebody dies in my village, when I was young here, you have that the oldest lady in the village comes and speaks about the past and the saga of the qualities of the dead. And here, so I'm going to speak about the qualities of literary theory in this way. This is when the afterlife is talking about the history of literary criticism and how it helps. What is this relationship between literature and theory? What comes first, the egg or the ham, as they say? This is why I changed a little bit the title and gave you the once upon a time, so once upon critical theory as if it were the past, towards an ethics of reading. Beginning is questionable. I shall proceed methodically. I stopped. I shall proceed methodically, strategically, by point of origin of my choice, and select a foundational discourse from the textual canon of the Western Christian tradition, which I shall call our point of origin, our threshold for interpretation. Noudar starts her course from classical theory down to structuralism, followed by diverse post-structuralism, which I read as deconstructive propositions of what Derrida calls the metaphysics of presence. And with the metaphysics of presence, with a metaphysical transcendental subject, who is the founder of that metaphysics, within the, what Derrida calls afterwards in the of grammatology, the logocentrism, the center of the logos. We'll come to the idea of logos. And then, of course, feminists will add phallocentrism, because the logocentrism is masculine, is androcentric, oriented to masculinity. And so you have the logo-phallocentrism. So I'm going to move through that, and I hope that I will not be boring. And if ever I am, and if you feel like yawning, please do it discreetly, otherwise I'll be disturbed by the destruction. First, the first word is critical theory. So what is theory? I always recommend that my students go back to the etymology of words. It helps a lot. And Derrida does this in all his works, moving from the etymology, the very beginning of term, and see the transformation of meanings. So I have to go to the meaning of theory. What is a theory? What might this be? In what and whose spirit does its shadow dwell? Etymology dictionary informs us of the archaic trace. The late 15th century, theoria meant principles or methods of science and art, rather than practice. The polemics is, what is the relation of theory to practice? We'll come to that, probably with Professor Bouhlila. Then in late 16th century, it came to mean conception, mental scheme, that's the meaning of theory, from Greek theoria, contemplation, speculation, and then you have the idea of vision that comes afterwards. A viewing, here I'm quoting from the dictionary, a viewing, a sight, a show, a spectacle of things being seen, of things being looked at. Speculation, contemplation, mental image of things being seen. So there is an object, the vision here comes into the scene. As long as it is a concept, an idea, a mental scheme, it remains abstract, shut in, shadowy. But with the etymological correlation with vision, sight, and spectacle, we get to know that outside over there is an object to see. An object is being looked at by a subject. The object is a site of reference. that embodies the essence of the theorical. I just discovered the term theorical. The theorical is a noun. Anyway, the subject needs to name the object, to make it big. Naming requires a voice that expresses the beingness of the object. The object will be represented by the concept. Thus, mimesis here gets in. The term of today's representation was born out of Plato's speculative mind. In the Republic, Book 10, Plato likens poems to pictures. I think you're familiar with that. And you have it. You have it on the handouts. Do you all have that? The first one. No, it's not the first one. It's number 3. I think it's number 3. You have it there. In the Republic, I'm gonna read it quickly as you have the sheets of it. At the top of the hierarchy of beds, is the idea. The idea of beds. That's that way. The idea of the bed. Next comes the physical example. This actual bed, constructed by a carpenter to imitate the primary original idea. First the idea, then the bed that is made by the carpenter to imitate the idea. Lowest of all, in the scale of representation of mimesis, is the picture of a bed, made by a painter or a poet, by the poet's inspiration of the idea through words. Now, language comes. In the beginning, then, was the concept, breathed out in language which augurs the genealogical process of all sorts of theories, be they literary, cultural, sociological, political, psychoanalytic, and so on. In Plato's statement, a hierarchical scale is set with the ideas, or what he calls the forms, the capital F, determined as origin and primary, transcending all things that are seen, of course. Objects and images that are represented. So presence, re-presence, that is made present again. Through what? Through the painter or language. Note here that mimesis is twice displaced from ideas. First you have the idea of bed, then you have the bed, then you have the image or the words about the bed. Twice displaced from that original idea of bed. In the beginning then, later on, this Platonic mimetic theory will similarly emerge with the birth of monotheism, monotheitism, if you will, through the authority of the transcendental voice. And here I read the Genesis, the biblical Genesis. In the beginning was the Word. The Word. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word made flesh. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, and the Word made flesh. This is how the monotheistic Genesis has been produced and reached Christian believers so as to give legitimacy to the power of the sovereign God as the performative authority of creation. The term Genesis announces a beginning, an origin, a coming into being of something, established in a second. Genesis, an event, etymologically, from Latin eventus, occurrence from evenire, to be born, to come out, to result. Event has come to mean that which happens. In the beginning was the Word is the event, and the Word will be made flesh. But an event or that which is born needs an authority with a special power to generate it, to invent it, to make it be, to reveal it. We need then a semiotics of revelation, a literature of creation. We need a mimetic fiction, a legend with a sublime plot written by a hero, or to borrow from Derrida, by a gifted author, which Derrida qualifies as a genius with genial capacities to tell and guide us through the labyrinthine tale of beginning and creation. Someone or something, or creators, or someone who makes or creates someone or something, one who generates, who is capable of birthing, therefore, of genesis. Modern French auteur for author, it comes from, foundational stone of traditional author from mid-14th century, auteur, that's the term, author means father. Author means father. Creator, one who generates, who is capable of birthing, who is capable of... Modern French auteur means promoter, producer, builder, founder, trustworthy writer, authority, historian, performer, doer, responsible person, and teacher. That's the author. Literally, one who causes to grow, to do, to originate from Latin, 14th century. A writer, one who sets forth written statements, who is source of authoritative information or opinion. Allow me now to read the biblical Genesis. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God, and the Word was God, and allow me now to read the biblical Genesis as an originary mythos in the light of Plato's theory of mimesis. At a linear level, the statement places the word God as the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was God. Beginning refers to a time in the Christian tradition of speculation about the origin of the word. Space is inherently linked to this temporal point of beginning. The Bible is thus the beginning. It has conventionally been read as comprising the underlying system of the Western cultural tradition. So you see the saussure coming in, the underlying system, the grammar. According to the literary critic Northrop Frye, the Genesis is a momentous occasion, I quote him. It's a momentous occasion, it's an event, a momentous event, a cosmic semiotic event when people are inscribed into the great code for the first time. Further, the statement places word, in the beginning was a word, as a simultaneous equivalence and occurrence with God. Word of God. The Word is God. Equivalence and occurrence with God. The Word is God. The Word is with God. The letter is a maker of flesh. God is here an agent, an author with the capacity to make objects be and things happen. The Word is made to be what it is by the Word of God. From Greek ligein, Word of God, ligein, logos is word, is concept, the concept in Plato. So logos from Greek ligein means to speak, to tell. The word reality as an object, as a spectacle, remember, is revealed to us through the word, through textuality. The word's origin, the real word, is fashioned discursively. The word is then logocentric. The center is the word. The word makes the world, if you want. Hey, اقرأ باسم ربك الذي خلق. The book opens with the phrase in the beginning, the book, the Bible. The hero God originates things. The act of generating is an act of making distinctions. God's voice reaches into the chaos. In the beginning was chaos. There is a Greek mythology. In the beginning was chaos. And separates the light from the darkness, the heaven from the earth from the water. Creation, which occurs in language, is a matter of naming, of making distinctions, and more specifically, creation is a matter of articulating opposites. Through these oppositions, God creates an underlying system of classification, without which the order is meaningless. Thus God creates meaning out of what Saussure calls negative differences, which the other phrase for negative differences is binary opposition. Negative differences or binary opposition, so chaos is not order. Or chaos is before God, order is created by God. Chaos is not order. What is that? Night is not day. Darkness is not light. Further, where there is a difference, there is a hierarchy. There is a privilege. We tend to prefer one word and over another. All people are afraid of darkness because there is no visibility, you never know what happens. So this is why the privilege comes here. Darkness is not light.
What about men versus women?
Excuse me?
What about men versus women?
Who should represent darkness in that case?
It's not versus. It's over.
The darkness.
Well, there is difference in hierarchy. In each case of the opposite pair, the reader meets a meaningful distinction between, because we know which half of the pair is positive and superior, which is negative and inferior. Light is preferred to dark, heaven to earth, order to chaos. In the second chapter of Genesis, the biblical Genesis, another creation story is introduced. The first human is identified as male. In Genesis 2:5, in the Garden of Eden, the microcosm of the world is humanity's first utopia from which all human history will emanate. The garden story adds two more oppositions, which are central and meaningful even ever after. The opposition between man and woman. In this story, man is formed first. In the beginning was man. Here, man is primary, woman is secondary, derivative. You know the story of the river.
So man is darkness.
That's it. In this story, man is formed first. Here, man is primary, woman is secondary, derivative. What follows is a history of the past. And everybody knows the whole discussion that is happening here. What is the role and the function of the woman? Woman, if you want to play with language, and let's play with it from a second here. Woman, there are some critics who say you have woo, man.
Yeah.
Man. But woo, man, woo is that object that woos, to woo, seduce. She is the wooer of men. Then you have man is a shrewd. Man is shrewd, means intelligent, and a woman is a shrew. You never know. You never know what the word can do. You linguists, I'm not agreeing.
But even female,
What follows is a history of the present. The hierarchy known as the great chain of being is established in terms of more negative differences. Animal life, man, woman, each in turn serving the other in accordance with underlying rules that inform the system and make meaning. One may say, in Platonic Syrian terms, that the system is longer and all the elements are long. In the second beginning, Adam is given the divine prerogative of naming as God parades the animals before him and invites him to identify them. Adam will own the world as God owns the cosmos that he named. God admonished Adam and Eve not to eat of the tree of knowledge. You know, you are familiar with these things. Declaring that eating will result in death. This admonition, commandment, don't, you shall not eat with this fruit. Do whatever you want. You shall not. And then starts the rule and the law is born. Commandment stands for the first law for the third divine rule. But structurally, for law to have meaning, remember negative differences in social binary opposition. You need, for something to have meaning, you need to know its opposition. For meaning to a negative, so law has to, for it to have meaning, needs a negative difference. A binary opposition is required, that is transgression. Without transgression, the law would be nothing. Transgression must happen, and indeed it does happen. Woman is thus created to instigate the crime. Woman. Before they call her head, Eve. So a woman is instigated to instigate the crime. When Adam and Eve do eat, they actually do not die. The only knowledge that they acquire is knowledge of their nakedness, knowledge of their own sexuality, and therefore knowledge of their ability to create. And above all, knowledge of the Creator who does not accept transgression. God is here the lawmaker, whose laws will later serve to make up the underlying system of humanity after the fall. God's rule will stand for the grammar that will admit no error, grammar mistake, extra no law breaking, no transgression. Because of that, man's fate will then be to toil, curse ground, and earn the family's gift. Woman's fate is pain in childbirth, and to earn year, punish, discipline, and punish. And to earn towards her husband, who will lord over her. That's in the Bible. So Sociostructuralist linguistic system of science, as this analysis shows, informs its cultural foundations. Hence, all cultures may be seen to be based on this very structural system of negative differences, manifesting the complex relations that abide by the underlying rules of its grammar law longer. In relation to our initial understanding of the discursive definition of a human reality, as we have just come to approach it, keep in mind that reality is a text. Means that it is ordered, structured by language. Our attitudes, our relations are dictated by a series of visions, interpretations, speculations, disseminated via diverse canonical discourses that precede us. Again, remember that in each stage of becoming, the spirit of what precedes it accompanies the development, is reproduced like the sound of an echo that repeats the original voice with a difference. The just mentioned notion of repetition with difference constitutes a happy coincidence as it rings the bell of our smooth transition to Ovid's legend, Narcissus and Echo. You have a synopsis of Narcissus and Echo and number 5b. 5b over there. You have the whole story. You know it. Everybody knows Echo. You know Narcissus, but not very well Echo, right? So please read it while I'm. Well, Echo is the one who fell in love with Narcissus, and Narcissus, you know that he doesn't respond. He is unresponsive. And you will see that in the dialogue, Narcissus tells her, don't touch me, don't, this is negative, remember shall not, you shall not do, comment, don't touch me. And Echo, who repeats only the last fragment, Echo, a Sadeh, Echo, who repeats the last fragment, what does she say? Don't touch me, she would say, touch me. Don't, negative, touch me, positive. That's what she, will come to it. In this section, then, I shall use the following strategy of reading. Now we have moved from Plato to the beginning of the origin Genesis to structural. Now we start to read. Faithful to the Derridian methodology, I will first pretend to read what the text says literally. What does the text say literally? This is Derrida. Your first reading. Read what the text says literally. To do so, I will read Ovid's legend through the Platonic lenses. You have handouts here, F1. You have Ovid's Narcissus, A. Whenever someone sees beauty down here, whenever someone sees her beauty down here, he takes wings and falters in his eagerness to rise up, but is unable to do so when he gazes aloft. And that is what it brings on him the charge that he has gone mad. When someone is touched by this madness, he is called a lover. Such person as I don't know when they say this experience that this is a philosopher Plato who is speaking, or Socrates, well, the name of it is so you can see that philosophy is true to life. Such persons are startled when they see an image that reminds them of true beauty. You have the physical beauty that reminds them of true beauty. Remember the concept, the idea, and the flesh. Beginning was the word, the idea, the logos, and then you have the flesh. They are reminded of true beauty, so true beauty is before. Then they are beside themselves, and their experience is beyond their comprehension because they cannot fully grasp what is there. That they are seeing and knowing. A second reading, this is the first reading before. A second reading will attempt to examine what the text reveals. Keep this in mind, please. What the text reveals through its very gaps. The text itself, so nothing outside the text. This is what Derrida means. This is what I would refer to as a symptomatic reading. You have a body and you look for a symptomatic reading. It is to read what the text says by not saying it, and what the text doesn't say by saying it. What the text says by not saying it, okay. And what the text doesn't say by saying it. My engagement will be ethical. Now I come to ethics. Will be ethical in the sense that it brings to the fore the deconstructive move carried out by Echo in Ovid's legend through her resonance to Narcissus' logo-phallocentric discourse. Remember that Echo doesn't speak first because she was punished by the goddess Juno. Doesn't speak. The first who speaks is man, Narcissus. And she will only take the last fragment from Narcissus' statement and repeats it. So logos, that's logocentric narcissism. Phallo, because that's man, and we shall see how she responds about that, and hence here the ethics of deconstruction that is coming in a moment. So the tale is framed around the notion of reflection with the emotional effects of sight and hearing as the structural components of the lover's interaction with the objects of their desire. By bearing in mind Socrates' description of such interaction in terms of mirror reflection, this section here attempts to fathom the complexities of the erotic relation experienced by Echo and Narcissus. Platonism, again, we come back to see the relation between theories. Platonism offers the most significant account of beauty. Plato recognizes that beauty is of greatest significance. As is argued in the Symposium and Phaedrus, however, erotic beauty ought to be eventually left behind. Physical beauty, left behind them. Love leads us from appreciation of and desire for the beauty of a particular human body to appreciation of and desire for the soul. Simultaneously established the hierarchical difference between the ideal and the embodied forms. Again, you have the hierarchy. Precedence and originality may suggest that erotic relations down here are but mere reflection of the perfect forms over there, transcendental. Attraction to physical beauty must cede in order to reach ideal beauty. A lover must move beyond the particular and reach out the universal. A first interpretation of Ovid's tale would thus be to demonstrate that both Echo and Narcissus are in love with what they cannot get. Apparently, the idea of love is beyond their grasp. Remember the quote here from Echo loves beauty, yet at first, when she meets Narcissus, when she sees him, what she sees is but a copy in the Platonic sense of beauty, the body of Narcissus. True beauty, the idea, cannot be reached. Attraction and recognition then are displaced from truth. Recognition is experienced as mimesis, as representation. Echo's first gaze on Narcissus remains on the physical. Attractive to look upon, Narcissus represents an appropriate example of self's beauty in the Platonic sense. The desirous Echo wants to touch him. She came out from the wood and made to throw her arms round the neck she loved. Similarly, and yet more dramatically, Narcissus has not fallen in love with true beauty when he gazes at his reflection in water. He is twice displaced from the Platonic reality, not with his body as copy, but with the copy of a copy that is his image in the water, the reflection of his image in water. Recalling Socrates' description of the lover's state when gazing upon his beloved, cited above, Narcissus does not realize that he is seeing himself in his lover as in a mirror. Narcissus then is more interested in surface beauty than in love of true beauty. He is more infatuated with the representation of Eros than with Eros itself. The body he sees is not body, as he is even mistaking it with an image. Fell in love with his own image in God. Narcissus remains isolated from true love by being locked down, confined, locked down, confinement. Confined with an auto-erotic phallocentric cathexis. Cathexis means attachment. His infatuation with his image is ironically made comic. Unwittingly, he desires himself, he praises, and is himself what he praises. Addressing himself to emptiness, he finds a way. Enchanted by the fiction of himself, blinded by his own image, Narcissus cannot see true beauty. This is the ethical lesson one can get from auto-erotic narcissism. Auto-erotic. يحب روحه وكعه. في عزيز روحه. Voilà. You have a film in Tunisia that just came out. عزيز روحه narcissist. The translation is narcissist. This is the ethical lesson from one gets from auto-erotic narcissism. Narcissism case sets the danger of self-love, non-relational love. It's non-relational, there's no relation. Self-love is egocentric. It speaks itself, it speaks itself so obsessively that it does not bear what the other would say, bear to hear what the other would say. The other's address, because it is different, is excluded. Negative differences, exclusion, marginalized from the center. Narcissist is the secular metaphor for transcendental authoritarianism, wherein only one's voice remains as meaningless chatter without authority, dead sounds without interaction, without relation. Infatuated with himself, Narcissus is the embodiment of a logocentric, phallocentric tradition. Monologic and misogynist. The legend shows that narcissism is motivated by a masculinist desire to remain erotically intact from the contamination of feminine differences. Well, feminine and men, in the opposite in men. Echo's peculiar imitation of Narcissus' language, on the other hand, shows that despite his refusal to reciprocate, she has continued to love him. This constitutes a desire for relational communication. But in platonic terms, this reveals that Echo is more infatuated by the idea of love, of beauty and love, than by the physical manifestation in the body of Narcissus. More so, Echo's definition as a fragmented repetition of an original actress proves to be a perfect deconstructed means of phallocentrism. Consider the following excerpt, an extract here from Ovid's Lenses. Here's a dialogue between Echo and Narcissus. Narcissus, come! Echo, come, come. Narcissus is over there, asking her to come. She repeats, come. So you have the direction that is in reverse here. He asks her to come, she does the same. So it's repetition, but a second with a different meaning. That's repetition with a difference. Narcissus, join me here. Echo, join me. Here.
The last
Here. Echo grazed her waters and ran out of the wood. To throw her long arms around his neck, he bolted, shouting, "Keep your arms from me, I'll die before I yield to you." Echo, I yield to you, I yield to you. Narcissus, be off, I don't love you. Echo, love you, love you, love you. That's as the interaction shows between Narcissus and Echo, by the time Narcissus has spoken, Echo already embodies the phenomenon that names her, echoing. She does not have the power to initiate speech, and thus she can speak only as repetition function. By duplicating the voice of another who initiates her mutilated speech. She needs to hear in order to speak. Her desire is the desire of another. She has no desire for herself. This representation of a woman with the ability neither to tell her own story nor to organize a cohesive narrative exemplifies the phenomenon of being able to speak in belated fragments a discourse that does not originate from her. She speaks one language. This is a very dark in monolingualism of the other. She speaks one language. Her language, that language is not hers. She speaks their own language, her language is not hers. Worse, she only repeats its fragments, so there's no structure. Her language is not hers. Juno is the goddess who punished her. Juno has eliminated the possibility for Echo to narrate an original utterance. Echo's fate consisted in being fixated as a voice which is not one. A reflecting surface, a shadow for another, as she will have no mirror, no image of herself. Echo's restricted relation to language can thus manifest its impossibility of finding words to tell her story. She is condemned to repeat his story, awkwardly, in a mutilated form. Marcel condemned to always speak in second, to speak in second place. Echo becomes then, as Juno has willed it, a ventriloquist figure of an impossible beginning, with an ironic wink on beginnings, on origin and cauchy, on primariness and secondariness, as Eve was secondary derivative from. Now we have Echo, who is secondary derivative. One would parody the biblical, I would parody, now I'm proud. One would parody the biblical Genesis by saying, in the beginning was the law, and the law was Juno, God, which is a God. And the law was with Juno, and the law was flesh. In who? In Narcissus. God created Adam in his own image. And the law was flesh in the performer of Juno's law, in word and deed. Narcissus is metamorphosed, thus with a shadow, mock Genesis. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was Narcissus. And the Word was with Narcissus, and the Word was flesh in Echo. Actually, by making this commentary in Narcissus' authority as being located in the legendary Genesis of creation, I intend to take risks and prove that the oneness of sovereignty in the authoritarian personality is actually connected to its metaphysical antecedent. Framed in the figure of God as most, if not all, orthodox accounts happen to reveal him. Hence, the secular borrowings of the sacred in terms of rule and authority are but ideological tactics that favor consent and facilitate legitimacy. In an inspiring volume entitled The Politics of the One, 2016, a certain Artemi Magoon argues in the introduction that the notion of the one in monotheistic religions has inspired secular politics, the notion of the one. وَأَطِيعُوا أُولَى الْأَمْرِ فِيكُمْ, that's the notion of the one, has inspired secular politics with the emphasis on the value and necessity of preaching obedience to absolute monarchies, social codes dictating uniform morality, and even nationalist, fascist, or totalitarian democracies. Think about America, USA is a totalitarian democracy, it's an imperial democracy, it's totalitarian. The authoritarian democracies succeeded in constituting a unitary people around the notions of faith and blind obedience by the laws of secular management of their affairs. So you see the relation between the transcendental, the physical, and the metaphysical, and the physical. Seeing within this analogy, Narcissus, we come back to Narcissus, would be artfully created in the Ovidian myth as a technique, in the service of Juno's, of the goddesses' hegemonic will. That is, as a pawn, as a puppet, as a soldier, as a petal, call him whatever you like. He would be no more than a mimetic shadow to enable the goddess's canonical law. Behind Narcissus' imperative utterances lurks not only the goddess's verdict against Echo, but himself as a pseudo-image of divine authority. Defined in these terms, Narcissus would be the object of Juno's law, and thus her interested desire to humiliate Echo. In the trinity of this relation, Echo would be the scapegoat, and Narcissus the pawn who functions as the barrier to Echo's desire. In Freudian Lacanian terms, Juno is the superego, the goddess, the superego, the sovereign of the symbolic order, while Narcissus is the ego, the one who controls and restrains Echo's it. That is the impulsive rise, yet as is felicitously proved in Echo's responsively sounding, this very barrier returns against its holder. Now we are into the ethics of deconstruction. Its holder, as soon as the nymph, because Echo is a nymph, as Echo breathes out the last fragment from Narcissus' self-centered statements. Echo's mutilation, say castration, will function as a promising token. Her passion for Narcissus will unsettle the goddess's sovereign law by designing a counter-system to be preserved and secured as a threshold for a new, ideal symbolic order based on the values of love. Let us bear in mind that the goddess's rule is not transgressed. Her law will not be broken. Echo does not initiate anything directly. She merely repeats the end of a sentence she used. On the contrary, it is this repetition function, which is the goddess's tyrannical penalty, punishment, that paradoxically favors the advent of the promising order to come. To Narcissus' exclusion of her as unwelcome otherness, she breathes out relation and hospitality in the kingdom of unconditional love. But come, join, here. I die before I yield to you, I yield to you. Be of, don't love me, love you. So the relation is, the punishment turns into something against the punisher. As this illustration here suggests, Narcissus' negative is turned positive. Narcissus' negative is turned positive by Echo, and his imperatives are subverted by changing their direction. Echo's utterances are actually not repetitions, articulated as recitations. They rather sound responsive. To Narcissus is anyone here, Echo answers by asserting the actual existence of difference, hers, and to his come, she in turn invites him to come. Hence diverting the sound direction of the encounter from him to her. Consider here, as an aside, how Juno's punishment, the goddess's punishment, works against her. The desired end of the penalty produces an undesired effect. In these two instances, Echo's originality remains intact. The voice of difference, far from being deferred, emerges as an assertive affirmative of difference. Robbed of her language, Echo yields to taking in the limit of Narcissus' aggression and returns it to him. In this particular scene, borrowing Julia Kristeva in Tales of Love, in her book, Tales of Love, borrowing Julia Kristeva's comment, Echo identified with Narcissus as, I'm quoting from the Kristeva, as an ideal other, who is the speaking other. The other insofar as he speaks. She bites, she says, at Narcissus' discord by nibbling at the last part which she doubles. As one chews in order to, you choose something, as one chews in order to assimilate, in order to digest. Indeed, by chewing gum, by chewing Narcissus' words, Echo is not imitating. She is rather setting the threshold to contrapunto architecture, designed from the after speech from the after-speech bits, fragments, with which he is inaugurating a new hospitable dwelling for his art and love. Derrida, Jacques Derrida, in turn, in his final works and seminars, echoes Christie's musing on Ovid's couple and redeems the echo by predating Narcissus' knowledge of himself before the scene of his gaze in the water, which precipitates his death. For him, for Derrida, Narcissus has an initial relation to himself by gazing at himself precisely through the gaze of another, and thus answering one only for himself, only from the resonance of echo. The resounding of difference, a repetition which is not one, which differs the narcissistic logos and frees it from its tragic solitude. In echographic images writing on piercing the visible, Joanna Masso equates echoes peculiar language to Derrida's reading of the Western exclusionary representation of difference and his constructive college of difference with A. She claims that by being referring to a different, and deferred, postponed, and deferred voice that is neither present nor close, the common name echo and the mythic name echo involve an interaction between repetition and deconstruction. Since the vocal repetition that echo produced in Ovid's myth are not simply a replay but a response to Narcissus' questions, we should consider the reprise, the repetition, as a proper answer. The echo is at the same time less and more than a repetition, a fragmentary reprise, and a full response. End of quote. Seen from this angle, echo's responsive resonance and resounding is an ethical gesture that turns the monologic centrality of the subject into a work of relation, opening it to a space of dialogic interlocution. Concordantly, according to Derrida, echo, I quote him, is the voice of another who feigns to send back to Narcissus the end of his sentence. Resounding here, and the term that Derrida finds is like eating. Resounding is like, remember, chewing, Christie, but eating in Derrida. Resounding here is like eating and giving back to eat. By chewing up Narcissus' last word, she is devouring him, consuming him, digesting him, which are instinctive actions of eating well. Relation. It is with this practice of relational well-being, in with the other, that Jules' disciplinary regime is ruined. A new, unmeasurable, and uncontrollable law is set. Let us give it the name of Eros. Love knows no prescriptions, Maymoon. It simply happens. Love is unruly, say abnormal, out of the norm. Love stands on the border of the law. It stands beyond measure, on the side of la démesure. The term is beautiful in French, la démesure, no, beyond measure. It has its own laws, that is, its lawless lawfulness. Lawless lawfulness, that's very deep. Its lawless lawfulness. Social rules and conventions about the desire, behavior, and love relations have always been transgressed by the natural manifestation of passionate love. This bluntly shows that no prescription can successfully function to limit the impulse of love. Thus, love's abnormal law cannot be prescriptive, like you, thou shalt not. It cannot be rationalized in the commodity market of interest and exchange. It can only be beside itself, mad, on the side of madness. Love is mad, but there is method in echoes. Madness. All this brings us echoes' ultimate self-abnegation and isolation in the caves demonstrate that she has gradually moved from the physical infatuation, she bursts in excitement out of force, to an unconditional embrace of the idea of love. Back to Plato. But if it is Ovid's artistic expertise that holds us, through Echo's response to Narcissus and through the letter's deafness and blindness to Echo's word and existence, a poetics and ethics. A poetics of communication is constructed in our minds. It is the ethics of listening, of relating, which is blocked by the narcissistic epistemologies that favor the voice of the self by repressing that of difference. Narcissism dies out of delusionally self-absorption. Echo dies out of care for the other. Her traumatic resonance echo is at the heart of the world's past, present, and future narcissistic constructions. Narcissus find an agony in Ovid's tale, uttered in regret and guilt. Les derniers mots de Narcisse, echt met Narcisse, alas, alas, helaas, ja, lief. We maken ook merknaars, we moeten mijn fashion them. Alas, he laments in an ultimate breath. Echo, in a mournful timbre, repeats his words by doubling it. Alas, alas, that's the repetition. She breathes out. Echo's alas is adieu. Farewell, adieu to God, to her God, to Eros. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ben Beya.